Welcome back, nieces and nephews, to JEWAP, which stands for Just Everything with Auntie Pookie podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, or as many know me as Auntie Pookie. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate the love and support, and I appreciate everyone who has participated in the podcast, all the interviews, and much more. So thank you. Now, in today's episode, I am doing a review on a friend of mine's book. Her name is Miss Tiana Hurd. Her book is called The Untold Secrets. Now, she was my very first interview I did when I started my podcast, and I appreciate it because she supports everything I do, and I genuinely appreciate and love her. She and I met through my sister, and they're really good friends still too, and I just love her. She's amazing. So if you haven't listened to my very first podcast, her episode was in 2 parts because it was just so good, and we dove so deep into her book, okay? To summarize what her book is about is basically her life and how she transformed and turned into a totally different person. She went through so much stuff, from doing drugs to stripping, all of those things, and to finally just loving herself and to change. And I mean, oh my gosh, she went through so much stuff. And I dove so deep into every detail of the interview because I wanted to really understand where she was coming from through all aspects of the book. She talks about how it was living at her aunt's house and the things that she went through, from sexual trauma to going to a new school and dealing with that transition, and even having to go to the doctor and telling them about the sexual trauma that she went through. She had to emancipate herself so that she can just be her own parent, boss. I mean, how crazy is that to have to go through? And I bet you a whole bunch of teens go through that, and I don't know the statistics on that at all, because I literally am fresh with learning about emancipation, even though I've worked with youth for years. She ended up even getting fake IDs so that she can go to bars. She knew what she had, so she used it against men and was able to do what she had to do. And it's just crazy that, like, first it's crazy really knowing someone who has went through so much hell, like growing up. And I know that I've went through some stuff, but my girl been through some stuff. And I don't want to tell all the details of her book because I really feel like she deserves her coins and her big one, as people would say it, because she's being very vulnerable to talk about everything that happened in her life. And I remember asking her, why she wrote this book. And even though she was afraid to write the book, and it took her forever, 5+ years, I think 10 years it took her to write this book, she literally wanted people to understand that even though she went through so many things, sexual trauma, being in the strip club, having a stroke, all of these things, she was able to overcome things, even being a parent and trying to be a good example for her children. Like, she has gone through so many things. And I think that it's a blessing that she was brave enough to tell her story. And there are probably millions of people who go through things like what she did, but they don't have the courage to talk about it. And also, people were mad at her for writing this book and telling her story. And it's life. When people get their true colors revealed, they don't want to be a part of it because they can't accept what they did wrong or how they literally ruined someone's life. The most important years of a kid's development is 1 through 5 years old. And those are some of the most important years. And then when you are continuously traumatizing the kid and putting them through hell and just sucking, that's the best way to sum it up, you are ruining them. And a lot of y'all don't care. And I really appreciate the opportunity that Ty gave me to be able to not only read her book, but also dive deep into her life to know her more and be able to be so proud of her and the things she went through and how she overcame them. And I remember telling her in an interview, girl, I can't complain because some of this stuff that I went through ain't nothing compared to you. And that's, we all say that, right? Like, people will get in car accidents every day and become paralyzed, and you're like, I shouldn't complain. But we complain. Hell, we complain that the person at the counter ain't taking your order fast enough, so you pissed off at them. But have you ever worked in a fast food restaurant? No. Have you ever worked at a school? During COVID, you know how many teachers quit? Because parents were treating them terribly because they had to watch their own kids. Ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? You got to watch your own kid. You got to monitor your own kid while working because your kid bad, so you send them to school so you don't got to deal with them most of the day. It's like there are so many people who are not humble and don't care because they care about themselves. It always ricochets, man. It always has an effect in the ripple of life. When you do bad things, you're literally transferring bad stuff to other people. And people only seem to care when they're dying. So you should care now. And care enough to not destroy the next little human being growing up. So they don't have to deal with a lot of the trauma and crap you went through. And even if it's hard for you to believe in them because you can't believe in yourself, hell, pretend. Love on them. Do something. Like do something. But anyways, I'm over here on a soapbox about to give a sermon, okay? But yes, check her book out. You can get it on Barnes & Noble's website. I believe I got it on there. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful story. And some of it, you're like, what? I mean, again, listen to the interview. One of my very first interviews I did for the podcast. And you will not be disappointed. Get her book. It is 115 pages. But it's amazing. And thank you again, Ty, for letting me interview you and sharing your life with the world.